Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman, and my guest today is writer Leslie Liautaud. We're going to be talking to her today about her book, Butterfly Pinned. Leslie, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And as those familiar with the show might be aware, we like to start things off talking about anything we may have read or watched lately. Did we like it? Did we hate it? Do we never want to have anything to do with that ever again? I'll go first just to give Leslie a little time to collect her thoughts. Haven't really had a chance to see any movies, but I've been catching up a little bit on my TV stuff. Still working my way through Stanley Tucci's his pretty much his Eating Through Italy series, which is on Max, and I love it because he goes through all these different regions and highlighting the food that is specific to that region. Just watching this makes you want to get on a plane, go to Italy, and just start eating. And it's just, it seems like a wonderful concept. And the other thing I watched, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, so they've wrapped up the Chudigatwa uh, era this past weekend. I was kind of disappointed with how they did. I did not like the show at all, but be interesting to see what direction they take it in with Billie Piper, who used to be a companion. Now, apparently, is she the Doctor? Who knows? We'll find out soon enough. But that's it from my end. So I'm going to toss it over to Leslie. What's new on the reading and or watching front?
I actually want to acknowledge the Stanley Tucci show you just talked about. I just read this fantastic Substack article about how refreshing this series is because we've gone through this era since Anthony Bourdain when
Oh,
he came on the scene and kind of glamorized this rock and roll pirate kitchen. Everything's grungy and f this
very,
and
very
that,
hardcore, very
very
raw.
hardcore. And that Stanley Tucci has just come in as this breath of fresh air, and
Mm,
how lovely he presents everything, and he doesn't even begin to pretend to be exceptionally knowledgeable in every single situation. He just enjoys it. And it kind of lets our blood pressure come down and enjoy it with him. So I love that there's another thumbs up for his show.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is that what's remarkable is that I guess they started filming it during COVID. So like the
Oh,
early
wow.
episodes, like the first one or two episodes, like everybody's wearing masks, and like they're greeting each other by touching elbows. And then as time goes on, they're no masks, hardly any masks seen. But my daughter and I started watching it during lockdown, but I forget, I think it was on Hulu at the time, and then all of a sudden it was gone. Like we got two episodes in, and they yanked it. And I just accepted the fact, okay, well, I guess I'm never going to see the rest of these. And then probably about maybe like late last year, Max picked it up and I was like, and so now it's just whenever I have a spare moment, and they're only like 45 minutes each, and just watch it. And as you said, it's almost like comfort food television
I love that.
and involving food. And yeah, he puts on no airs. He doesn't take advantage of his celebrity. He's very humble and he just loves everything that he's eating. I think that's part of the appeal.
I love that. I love that. Well, I on my end, I just finished up the studio on
Oh,
Apple Plus. I could not love that series anymore. After working in entertainment, to just be able to make fun of ourselves, I think there's something very refreshing about that in an industry that is can be so riddled with insecurity and
mm,
neediness, to not downplay it but to double down on it.
yeah.
And it is just so well done, and it's so well written, and there's such a slow burn, but your anxiety level is up here the entire time. So I highly recommend it. And then I recently just finished The Tell by Amy Griffin,
Okay.
which is a book. And it's another one. I have not been able to get it out of my head. It's her life, that she went through like a psychedelic therapy, and recovered memories of being sexually abused as a child. And this is a woman, I mean, she's in the upper echelon of New York society. There's nothing to gain on her part
Hmm.
from no celebrity gain to, come out with this. And it's raw and it's honest and deals with the fact that not everything, justice doesn't always come and
Hmm.
things aren't always wrapped up in a bow. And she just tells it so beautifully. So that is one. Both of my recents are highly recommended.
That is fantastic. And then it's The Tell, and I'm sorry, who's the author again?
Amy Griffin.
Amy Griffin. Okay, The Tell. Yeah, we've had an author on here who was also a victim of sexual abuse, and she used writing as a kind of a catharsis, as a way to kind of get past that and heal it. And also, it didn't help that the person doing the abusing was her own father, and
Oh,
so it was a heartbreaking story, but she was really very forthcoming in all of the details, but also the emotions that were involved. And it sounds like this book is very similar to that.
yes, very, very similar.
Okay. Well, on that much serious
On
note,
that at a high note,
yeah,
yes.
we're gonna shift gears a little bit. So let us talk to Leslie Liautaud. Well, first I'm gonna read the bio from your book, Butterfly Pinned, and then we'll get a little bit about you. Born in Kansas City, Missouri, Leslie Liautaud is the author of the immersive play Southern Gothic, which won 3 Joseph Jefferson Awards and 10 Chicago Theater Awards, including Best Play and Best New Work. She is also the author of Black Bear Lake, first place winner of the Chanticleer Review's Somerset Literary and Contemporary Fiction Award, and Leslie resides in Nashville. So, Leslie, let's talk a little bit about you. So, how did you get your start? Were you a writer, from a young age? Were you one of those voracious readers and said, "I'm going to give it a try," or was it something you came into later in life?
Well, I was always a reader, and I lived in a house that everybody were readers. My father uh, read his whole life, and even after retirement, he was retired for about, I don't know, 6 weeks, and then decided that wasn't for him. And he got his dream job, which was working in a library. So
Oh,
he's been at a library for 10 years now. And he is just immersed in books all the time and happy as a clam. And my mother was an actress, and she would actually read Shakespeare to my sister and I at bed. So
oh,
our bedtime
wow.
stories, she would read Shakespeare. So we grew up in a very book centric house,
Hmm.
literature centric house. And my background is actually in theater and dance. And I started when I was 5 in theater and just never stopped. I didn't stop until I started having kids. And so I quit cold turkey. I raised my children. And I knew when my youngest was ready to go to kindergarten, I knew I needed to put my hands back into something. And I traveled a lot with my husband, so I knew I couldn't do theater again.
Mm,
And I was actually at a dinner party one night, and a gentleman was talking about the story of the Taj Mahal
okay.
and the love story behind it,
Mm,
which I don't know if you know this story or not, but it's a beautiful love story, like an absolutely gorgeous love story. And the Taj Mahal is a monument to this Shah's wife that was the love of his life. And that is what the Taj Mahal is. And I remember sitting there thinking, why haven't I heard this story before? Why haven't I seen a movie about it? And then I'm like, I could write a script. I could do this.
hmm.
And I started the next day. I downloaded Final Draft and I started typing away. And I wrote, which it's probably the worst script ever written in the history of scripts. I had no idea what I was doing, but I enjoyed it. And so from there, it was a really easy jump to writing for stage because
Oh,
with
okay.
plays, I know the formatting like the back of my hand.
Mm.
I know character arcs and story arcs, and so I started writing plays, and I feel that, so many people don't understand. It's like I have this piece of work, and we all think our work is great, right? At the beginning. And I have this great work. I'm going to put it out there. And why is nobody interested? And I think a lot of people don't grasp how long it takes to get a script into somebody's hand, or just get to the point where you're good enough for it to get into somebody's hands. I was, and there's a lot of luck involved.
Mhm.
I was lucky enough to have ties to small little community theater in Kansas City. And so I worked out a deal with them that I would give them a script for free. So they didn't have to pay any royalty fees. They wouldn't have to do anything like that. They would perform it. I got to see then how the play played out, what needed to be worked on, what needed to be changed.
Was
So
it
in
was
essence,
it was that like an actual performance, or was it more like a table read type of
no,
thing?
these were
Oh
performances.
my, okay.
So it was great for them because it was no cost to them except to put on their show. And for me, it was phenomenal because it was more than a workshop. I really got to see how it played out. And so we went back and forth and did that with several plays. And that's how I got into writing full time. And from there, after I don't know, gosh, probably 10 years or so of doing this, I decided I'm going to just try writing a book. How different can that be?
I was gonna say, like, what was it that caused I guess triggered the transition from writing for the stage for to writing, I guess, prose.
Yeah, it was just honestly, it was just personal challenge.
Oh,
I
okay.
thought I want to see if I can do this. And so I wrote Black Bear Lake, and again, it was okay, right? I mean, it's like your first attempt at anything. It was okay. And put it away for a while. I got a call from Blue Handle Publishing, and they said, "Hey, we've heard about some of your successes in theater. Would you ever consider writing a book? We'd love to partner with you." And I said, "Well, I have this manuscript." And so I gave it to them, and we went through editing, 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 editing. And I will die on this hill. You cannot put out a good book without a good editor. And editors make or break books. They really, really do. And I was just very fortunate to have fantastic editors. So that was how I got into writing novels, and I really got hooked on it. I really enjoy the solitude of it, and you spend enough time writing a book as opposed to a play that those characters really become real to you. And you you know we were talking earlier about how sometimes a book characters, a story unfolds on its own.
Hmm.
And I find that to happen much more in writing a book than I do with a play. And I
Okay.
think
It
part of
actually,
that,
yeah,
yeah,
I
I
was going
think
to
part
say,
of it might be the
that raises
time.
one question for me. I sorry to interrupt, but
No.
so with the play, and a bit, for me, it's like writing a screenplay. It's a very visual thing
Yes.
that you can't write about, what the character is thinking or why they're doing something, but you can do that in a book. You can go into the characters' heads. Was it really challenging for you to make that transition? Like, okay, Bob goes up stage stage left and opens the door, but you can write in the book, as Bob crosses the room to the door, he's thinking about, when he left Melanie at the altar and that sort of thing. I mean, was it a challenge for you to do that, or was it actually an easy transition? Did you say, "Oh, actually, this is so much easier now," or it's different but still challenging?
The I would actually say the biggest challenge is the descriptive writing.
Hmm.
The dialogue comes very natural to me. The descriptive writing, there is a really fine line between saying the trees were green in the spring and saying the oak tree with its four leaves that were just beginning to bloom, and and it can prattle on and on and on and on. That to me was the biggest challenge, was finding a balance in giving enough description and not going overboard where your reader is flipping ahead pages because they
Hmm.
can't stand to talk about trees anymore. Um, but with as far as the dialogue goes and getting inside the head, I look at plays as deep dives into psychology because it's all about what is said and or what is not said. I mean, everything is psychology driven in plays. That's how I look at it. Um, and with books, you're able to express and share more with your reader, and so the dialogue, I don't know that there's as much weight on, you have to be so succinct in a play, and you have to there you really cannot throw away any dialogue.
Hmm.
They're shorter, number one. But number two, you don't have a chance to, like, okay, pause the play. Uh, Let me tell you what's going on in Harry's mind over here right now, right? His words have to say it, and
Hmm.
his actions have to show it. But with a book, you can play around with it more, and you can divulge more, and you can share more with the reader, and you can flashback,
Hmm.
and you can say, back to when he was 5 years old and this happened with his mother and father. And then back here, well, of course, now he's thinking this and he's saying this and doing this. So I actually think you have much more leeway in a book than you do with a play.
Okay, so that is very insightful, and it's also so applicable, not just to, writing for stage or writing books, just writing overall.
Mm-hmm.
That it's really about getting into the heads of your characters, and I guess with the more the medium is like how are you able to convey that with screenwriting and playwriting. It's really about the dialogue and what the characters are doing, but with the books it's very much you can do whatever you want. You can have them at what they're doing, what they're saying, definitely what they're thinking, and why they're doing these things as well. So
Right.
that it's such a wide spectrum. But I do want to move on to so you did Black Bear Lake. So then your next book, which is Butterfly Pin. So what? Well, first let's go over the I guess what we I like to call the elevator pitch for it. Like,
Mhm.
so you're at or you're at a cocktail party and say, "Hey, Leslie, what's this new book you're writing about?" And you
Which,
say,
by the way, this is the hardest thing in the world for a writer to do. I even don't know if your writers ever say that, but the log line and the elevator pitch are, I think those are the hardest things for a writer to
a few
do.
writers have echoed that sentiment.
It's absolutely terrible. But it is about a naive college co-ed that meets a toxic girl at school, and they go on a downward spiral in a friendship that is addled with drugs and mental illness. So that's the super,
That's
super shortened version
sure,
of
sure.
it.
No,
It's a little of a less than zero,
yeah.
cruel intentions.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Definitely a less than zero a vibe to it.
Yes.
So I guess the big question is, so what was the inspiration for the story? I mean, did you just come up with like, hey, what if, it's like, I mean, you said you have kids, like are they in college? And like, what if everything went to hell for them while they were in
Oh my
school?
gosh. God. No, I would be in therapy myself right now over this if my kids went through this. Um, no, it actually started because I don't know, it popped in my mind as all of these ideas do. You don't necessarily know where they come from. But I was really examining female friendships
Hmm.
and how more than men and male friendships, female friendships mimic romantic relationships. Physically, women don't think anything of holding hands. We hug each other. You know, we're physically intimate, kiss each other on the cheek. We tell each other, I love you, where it's very, very intimate. And the same goes when a friendship falls out or when it becomes toxic. There's jealousy, obsession, manipulation. So that is was at the core of what started this whole book. And I originally wrote it that way, where it truly was just an examination of female friendships. At the inception, the beautiful honeymoon phase of it, and if it goes poorly, the downfall of it. And I was with an agent at the time who was so spot on, but she said, "Listen, it's it's kind of you've got a little bit of a thriller aspect to it, but
Hmm.
it's also heavy literary. I can't sell this. Like we need to put it in one place or the other." She said, "How about you take it a little bit darker and I can sell it then as a psychological thriller." So I did. So I jumped in, made it really dark, and gave it back to her. And she said, "Well, now it's too dark. Now I can't sell this because nobody's going to
Dial it
read
back, dial it
to
back.
dial it back." And at that point, I was a few years into it,
Mm.
in between drafts, and that it's how long it takes when I'm not sitting down 10 hours a day
Sure, sure.
writing to get this done. And so I put it away. I said, I've got to get my head out of this book and out of this story. And I put it away for 5 years.
Wow.
And in the meantime, I had written that play Southern Gothic, and that took up a few years of my life. And when I came back to the manuscript, I gave it to my publisher, my now publisher, and they said, "Yeah, this definitely needs some work and this needs to be dialed back." And I really, I was looking at it from one angle, and it's so easy to get hyper focused into
Hmm.
it needs to be in box A. And I literally woke up one moment and went, "Oh my gosh, it's not box A, it's box B. I know what this story is about." And what had happened in the 5 years that that book had been put away was we had the Epstein
Mm.
case came about. And now we have the Diddy trial going on.
Sure.
We have a vocabulary now for what grooming is and grooming that leads to sexual assault. And we have an understanding now of the psychology behind all of it, which we didn't have really as a society. We didn't have that before Epstein happened.
Hmm.
And so I hadn't known it at the time, but I already had been crafting that kind of scenario. I didn't even have the vocabulary for it at the time. So that is then how the book finally became what it is now.
Okay. I have to, I'm very intrigued, especially with that 5 year gap. That's just fascinating. So when you started it originally, was it more or less set in place? But I mean, as you said, you had some feedback from editors. It's too dark.
Yeah.
Make it more dark. But were the foundations there from the beginning? Was it more or less the same story, but just like I guess the intensity adjusted over the course of time?
It was the bones were there.
Okay.
The bones were there. I definitely I added in the aspect of an actual assault taking place, which wasn't there previously.
Hmm.
Um, when I added it in, That's when it became way, 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 way too dark.
Okay.
And um, and I did dial that back quite a bit. But in general, the bones were all there.
Okay, yeah. So I did have questions. You've already addressed them. Like one of it, did a lot of it change? Was there any drastic changes? But that's really more to the story overall, not really just, I guess, certain details. And I this is the big note. Some of the events get a little extreme. I guess initially, how did you decide how far to go? And according to the editors, you had to dial things back. Or maybe you like took it upon yourself to think, okay, this needs to be more intense, or this is too intense. I need to dial it back. How did you find that line, like knowing, okay, I've crossed the line, I've gone too far, or okay, I've like my toe is touching the line right now. I mean, how did you determine how intense to make certain parts of the story?
Well, part of it was I had to get out of an adult brain
Hmm.
because there are a lot of decisions that the main character makes in this book that, as an adult, you're sitting there going, oh, don't. It's like watching when you're at the movie theater and you're watching a horror movie and the girl runs into the barn
Don't go to
at
the
night. You're
door.
like, don't go in the barn. Um, I found, as an adult, if I'm reading it, there, especially before I dialed it in, there was so much like, oh, why would you do this? But I had to put myself in the mindset of a 21-year-old
Hmm.
that is dying to fit in, is dying to find her tribe, is dying to be part of a community, to be accepted. And when she starts getting some adoration and some love and some sense of acceptance, she doesn't have that fully formed adult brain yet to say, like, I don't know that I'm quite ready to sell my soul for this. She's like, bring it on. And so it was putting myself in that very naive mindset of how far would a naive, introverted 21-year-old who is truly just wants to be accepted, wants to be loved as a person, and is searching for a friend group where she belongs.
Hmm.
How far would a girl that age go with
Yeah,
those needs?
yeah, that raises a great question. Is that when you started, excuse me, was this main character? Her name is Marin, which I relate to because I live right next to Marin County, and that were you writing her kind of like a younger version of yourself, and then you realize I can't. This character is not me, so I can't. She can't react the way I would react. She has to react the way she would react, and you had to get used to that.
Yes. That's a really good point because in general, I think that is it's an easy pitfall to fall into, which is what would I do?
Right.
Or what would I think or how would I respond? And to the antagonist and the protagonist in this book could not be more different. And neither one of them are characters that I necessarily relate to. Um, if anything, maybe more Marin at the end. A little more. She's like been through it a little bit
Hmm.
and is starting to gain some street smarts. But both characters, I had to completely detach
Hmm.
and look at it from their point of view and what their needs are, what their mindset was.
Okay, yeah, I did want to ask you about that. So the two main characters, as I call them, there's Marin, who's our protagonist, and Bet, who's our like antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they're both very well developed. I was really impressed with both of them, especially because Bet is such a quiet character. She really doesn't say much, especially because the story is told from Marin's point of view. We're in her head, and it's always, I went down to Bet's house, that sort of thing. So, I originally had what was the process for creating them? But when you were creating them, because they're very opposite, to each other. Beth's very quiet and reserved and almost almost like snake-like,
Mhm.
and Marin is very not I don't want to say outgoing, but she's not necessarily Little Miss Sunshine either, but she's very, I guess, more Pollyanna-ish is
Yes.
maybe a good way to describe her. And so was that part of the initial appeal of the stories? Like you have these two very opposite personalities coming together, and of course, Bet has much more of an influence on Marin, and Marin just is just, I guess, almost like a plaything to Bet. Was that part of what drove you to want to put this story together?
Yes, in that I've always been fascinated with mental illness. I've always been fascinated with I don't want to like put her in this category, but the evil mind,
Mm.
sociopaths and psychopaths. That was honestly, I studied acting in college. What I had wanted to go into was criminal psychology. That was it. Just fascinates me because it's everywhere, and we don't have flashing red lights above the heads of people that are going through episodes and or somebody that is a sociopath. They don't have a sweatshirt on that says it, so you
I'm a
can't pick them out, right?
sociopath.
um but it's not socioeconomical. It's not uh honestly, it's not even necessarily, I mean, although nurturing, how you're raised can play into it, but there's a wiring in your brain that is just different. And I just find that so fascinating. And so that was from the get-go kind of the thriller aspect
Mhm.
of the book.
Oh, okay. So I thought that you had more. Yeah, I had another comment is that Beth makes for a most formidable antagonist. In some ways, she's very femme fatale-ish, but
Mhm.
without the "I'm trying to kill you"
Yeah,
aspect.
right.
Were there qualities or traits about her that you wanted to make sure you included, but also ones that you wanted to make sure you avoided? Like you didn't want to fall into cliches. She's a Black Widow type, or she's just a spoiled rich girl. I mean, you wanted to give her some depth, really flesh her out.
Yes. And I think, again, that goes back to mental illness. It's not a certain class of person, or it's not a certain upbringing of a person, or if you attended this school,
Mhm.
there's no way you could be messed up. I really wanted to showcase with her that mental illness can lurk anywhere. And also, ultimately, she wasn't in control of it. She was in the throes of it, and someone who is clinically mentally ill cannot. It's not a decision they make when
Mm.
they wake up in the morning. And so, in crafting her, like, I didn't want to make her, the snobby rich girl. She's mentally ill.
Mm.
And so all of the driving, going back to what we were talking about, getting in the head of a character, everything that drives her is from a very different place. And frankly, how even her parents dealt with it.
Mm.
I didn't want that to be black and white. There's a really great quote by Tennessee Williams that I will not get this right, but it says to the effect of, um, people are not black and white. We all live in shades of gray. And I think with all of the characters, I wanted to make sure that there were different dimensions to them that you could see,
Sure,
because
sure.
that's how everybody is. Nobody is two dimensional.
And
You know,
everybody has a light side and a dark side. It's just how
absolutely
intense are those two sides?
right. And how what you see is how you're meeting them at that moment.
Hmm.
You're bringing your own self to them, and whatever is going on in their day, they're bringing that self to you. And that's going to be a unique version of that person. It could be every single time you meet them.
Yeah, even the happiest person can have a really lousy day.
Absolutely.
I just want to remind everybody we are talking to Leslie Liautaud about her book, Butterfly Pin. You kind of addressed this a little bit earlier, but I did want to ask about it. There is a lot of building tension over the course of this story as these two characters interact. And sometimes I really was expecting like it take a sharp turn into thriller territory. Uh, I guess while you were writing it, or maybe based on the suggestions or the don't do that from the editors, like did you ever consider doing that? Or was it already an established path and like maybe they say, okay, if we're getting too close into thriller, maybe dial this part back a little bit because there's so many times where things were happening. I was not sure what was going to happen. And I really was almost like Leslie would do that in this script. And those things, a lot of them did not happen. But it was definitely not an implication. It was implied that this was going to happen, or it really made you think this is an inevitable end to this journey type of thing. Whereas it again, I guess about the levels of extremeness that were you ever tempted to kind of diverge into that path, or was it just kind of like this is what I want? I'm just gonna like give you hints of that sort of thing.
Mhm. I think it was definitely, I wanted to give hints. I'm a big fan of slow burn. Like, I
Okay, this
really
this
like
is
slow
definitely
burn.
that.
I like it a little building, building, building. And in some ways, I think that's because that's how life happens. We rarely get smacked with something traumatic over and over and over. It's something that when we have something really bad happen in our lives, um, unless it's totally out of our control, you could look back and be like, oh my gosh, there were so many moments. Why didn't I see that? Why didn't I see that? Why didn't I see that? And there are some really extreme moments in the book. But again, 21-year-olds loose in the city, they're doing extreme things.
Hmm.
And when they're given carte blanche to just, you've got all the money to do whatever you want, and you're given free reign to roam, and you have a ringleader that's saying, come on, let's do this.
Hmm.
I know a lot of 21-year-olds that, they, when they're hitting 40, look back and are like, I can't believe I'm still alive today. That
Sure.
was an insane part of my life. But, I do think in real life, when we have a massive traumatic event, we can look back and say, God, there were signs all of,
Right.
I just didn't see them,
Hmm.
or I chose not to see them.
And I think it's also the mark of really good writing is that you set up all of the things that are going to happen, but you're not so blatant about it. It's not so in your face, but that there are times where I'm guessing the reader is sensing, okay, this is something that was unexpected, and this is starting to take a different path than what I was expecting. And then it keeps building, as you said, the slow burn and the building of tension, and then it all culminates in some kind of not explosion, but something really bad happens. And I think that's just that says something about the quality of the writing is that the reader is so engaged that it's it's a page turner, but they want to see what happens. But it's almost like I'm afraid to see what happens.
Well, thank you. Thank you
Sure.
very
Okay, the last question I want to add is that, as we said, the book is told from the protagonist's point of view, our heroine Marin, and it's in a first person presentation. So, did you do that by choice, or did you think that was a more effective way to tell the story rather than just straight up third person? Like Marin walked to the door and open up, and there was Beth standing at her, staring at her, as opposed to I walked over and opened the door, and Beth's giving me the evil eye type of thing.
It's really funny that you bring that up, because I changed the point of view
Hmm.
3 times during,
Wow.
during the course of writing this book. Um, Going back to that first agent, I had originally written it in first person. And she said to me after she read the rough draft of it, she was like, why in the world did you write this in first person? She's like, it's, if we want to make this a little more of a thriller, this really should be third person. And
Mm.
it's like, oh, okay. So I went back through, changed
Wow.
all of it again. And then when I came back after the 5 year gap, I was like, no, this doesn't feel right. I feel like this really needs to be told from the protagonist's point of view. I really wanted to go into, maybe this is a better way of saying it. I didn't know how to convey what was going on in Marin in third person.
Mm.
It's like I needed to be in her voice to really convey how fragile she was on the inside. So maybe that's a better answer is I didn't know how to do it in third
Sure, sure.
person
No,
to get that intimate with her.
and I think it's more effective to have it in the first person because, as you said, we're in her head, so we're seeing all of the effects that everything around her is having on her, and it's more has more of an impact that way rather than just. And Marin was really upset.
Right, right, exactly. Because again, there's so much that we don't say. You know,
Right.
we don't say things. So and it does become very boring when you say, Marin was moping around the house and feeling sorry for herself. It becomes like a third grade narrative.
That
So
that's true. That's true. Okay, so the book is Butterfly Pinned, and we've been talking to the writer of said book, Leslie Liautaud. Leslie, thank you so much for being here today. This was fascinating stuff, and it's a really, as we've been talking about, it's a gripping, thriller-esque kind of book, but it is definitely an intense look at this very intense relationship between two women.
thank you. Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, my pleasure. And the big question is, so where can people find out more about you, and where can they get a copy of Butterfly Pinned as well as your other works?
Well, you can go to my website, leslieliautaud.com. You can go to Blue Handle Publishing for order. You can order through them. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and I do check messages. So
What are you on Instagram and Facebook? Is it the same handle there?
it's the same handle, author Leslie Liautaud.
Author Leslie Liautaud, not just regular citizen Leslie Liautaud.
Just regular little me.
Fantastic. Well, again, Leslie, thank you so much for being here today. This was great, and I highly recommend the book. It is very intense. It's also a very fast read too. A definite page turner, to coin a phrase.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And viewers and listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. Taking a look at my social media, you can check out my screenwriting blog, MaximumZ.blog. For Twitter, I'm still there at Maximum_Z, and this show is at Podcast CWL. Blue Sky and Instagram, I'm at Pez Screenwriting, PEZ, and the show is also on Blue Sky at, again, Podcast CWL. I got a couple of books out as well. The Go Ahead and Ask books on Amazon, the ones about screenwriting and pie. Like I said, that's Leslie. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.